What's going on, Guardians? It's Tizzle here, and today we're going to be talking about the new patch notes that just dropped, specifically a few buffs in those notes. These buffs are significant to say the least, and they are pushing a few exotics heavily into the limelight. So I'm going to break down everything you need to know so you can try out these new meta weapons. There are a couple interactions that I was curious about because I wasn't sure if they would be hit by the buff. The first one is Vex Mythoclast. It is classed as a fusion rifle but shoots like an auto rifle, so I was curious if it would get the buff. Sadly, it does not appear that Vex got the 25% auto rifle buff to damage. It is dealing the exact same damage before and after the nerf. I tested it in the daily loss sector as well, except yesterday's sector was Solar Surge, so it was buffed by that, but even still, with calculating the math, we can see that it was not buffed. I thought this would be the case since it is technically a fusion rifle, but I just wanted to make sure. The next weapon I wanted to test is a unique hand cannon, the Ariana's Vow. Before the nerf, on a red bar it would hit for 49,349 damage with first glance active, and after the nerf it hits for 59,218. This is a 20% buff, so we can confirm that it did in fact receive the buff today. However, this buff only applies to red and orange bars. Sadly, this buff did not apply to champions. Again, yesterday's lost sector had solar burn, so it will hit for 25% more damage. It was hitting for 28,380, and today was hitting for 22,704. This is exactly a 25% difference, which is due to the surge. Another weapon I want to shout out real quick is the Forerunner Special sidearm. I didn't get pre-footage of it because I forgot, but if Ariana's received the buff, then I am willing to bet it did too. And what is great about Forerunner is it has a lot more ammo than Ariana's Vow, so you can use it on trash mobs like red and orange bars more easily. This thing will absolutely slap. And it is kinetic, and kinetic specials also got a 15% buff this season. I actually made a video breaking down why kinetic specials are so damn good now if you're interested. But suffice to say, Forerunner absolutely wrecks now, and this season it has the added bonus of anti-barrier sidearm. Moving on to the next buff, and I was super excited for this one, the Revision 0 Exotic Pulse Rifle. Pulse Rifles got a 20% buff across the board, but they also stated the Hawkeye Heavy Burst Fire Mode would receive a 75% buff. That's absolutely crazy. So I was curious if these two buffs stacked, and to my amazement, they do. Before the buff, the 2-round burst would hit for 4773 damage. After the buff, it hits for 10,023 damage on a crit. That is massive. That is a 2.1x damage increase, more than double damage. And it just so happens to be 1.2 times 1.75, which is the two buffs. So they did both apply. I was also curious if it buffed the sniper shot, and if so, by how much. Well, it was buffed by 25%. It's kind of weird, I expected it to be 20%, but hey, we'll take it. I also tested this on the Unstoppable with the sniper round, and again, it hits for 25% more damage. I didn't pre-test on a barrier champion, but for some reason the sniper hits even harder on the barrier Colossus than it did on the Unstop. On the Unstop, after the buff it hits for 47,816 damage, but on the barrier champ, it hits for a whopping 59,770. This weapon is probably going to be a go-to in GMs and high-end PvE content going forward. It's absolutely awesome. And lastly, for the buff I was most curious about, the Quicksilver Storm. This weapon already shreds, but I was curious if its grenade launcher mode would get the huge 25% damage buff as well. And to my amazement, it did. You can see on the red bar, before the buff I hit for 95,606 damage, and then after the buff, my grenade launcher hits for 119,508, a 25% damage buff. Sadly, against the Unstoppable, it hits for an identical 63,037 damage, but still, this thing absolutely wrecks red bars and majors, and even without a buff to champions, you can see it still slaps. This weapon was already great before, so now it's 25% stronger. I'm pumped to play around with more of these new weapons. I also want to give a shout out to the sidearm buff. I've been playing with Trespasser a lot lately, and it is absurd. And next season we are likely going to get an Arc Surge, so it will really have time to shine. It shreds through everything, so dust it off if you haven't used it in a while. But all the exotic sidearms are going to be really good now. Final Warning and Devil's Ruin especially. They both hit very hard, and they're now 20% stronger. Anyways, I hope this video was helpful, and if it was, then a like and subscription would be greatly appreciated. Take care.